Right now, people are feeling so pinched financially. And not only is it affecting people's day-to-day lives, their mental health, their family lives, but it's also affecting people negatively, spiritually as well. Today we could talk about everything going into this, from, how bad inflation's getting. People are feeling it just in their, day-to-day lives with that. We could talk about, the global economy, or who has set up this system, actually who owns the system that's keeping you trapped. But today I'm going to hone in on 2 points in particular that this is deeply, deeply hurting people, not only keeping them more trapped in the system, setting themselves up to where they'll forever be trapped in the system, but it's also hurting people spiritually as well. And the second point in particular is something new that I am seeing so many people fall prey to right now, and it is setting people up for years and years and years of pain and hurt. So the first point is kind of an obvious one, but one that's only gotten worse, and that is consumerism. How much our society has ingrained in us to focus on, buying things we don't really need to quote unquote keep up with the Joneses, to impress other people. The amount of things people are buying right now just to show off on social media or show off to their neighbors, on things that they definitely don't need. And frankly, if you were to ask them, if you took everybody else off of planet Earth and it was just them, would they still be wanting whatever they're buying? Most of the time the answer would be no. People are buying things for other people when these other people don't even care about your life anyway. And with that, we see people going into car loans to buy a car to impress other people, where these car loans now, the percentage of car loans over $1,000 a month is insane. We see, people that could buy the same shirt, a non-brand shirt, for $40, get the same exact shirt but have a brand on it, pay $140. They're going to pay the $140 just to have that name brand shirt. The consumerism, materialism, to impress other people is kind of really, really ingrained in us. It's been deeply ingrained into pretty much every generation, all the way back through, the boomers, even beyond. That's where the phrase "keeping up with the Joneses" came from. But now with social media, it's been perpetuated to an insane degree. I can't tell you how many times I've encountered influencers, whether online or even in person, that on social media, it looks like they are crushing it. They're going on these extravagant vacations. They are, they have incredible cars. It seems like they are living the life. And then when you come to find out, they are deeply broke. They are literally paycheck to paycheck, essentially, charging everything to the credit card and making it seem like they are living the life. This whole kind of fake it till you make it mentality with so many influencers and people you see out there is wildly out of hand. And it's ultimately this just materialism that people are buying things they definitely don't need, and ultimately, frankly, probably don't even want anyway. And this right here is already something that we're going to get into in a second, how it's actually definitely hurting people spiritually. But this is much deeper than just, people just being unhappy with what they already do have. And they're trying to fill the space, fill the void, buying things they don't need. And that leads into point number 2. And this is something now that is so incredibly dangerous. I think it's very common knowledge now about, how dangerous credit cards are. People get credit cards because they believe that they are going to be great at, they are going to pay it off before the end of each month. They are not going to hold an interest on it, or hold a, amount on it that grows in interest. But very few people actually even do that. And then with how high interest these credit cards are, this quickly becomes a trap, that now people are racking up thousands of dollars in credit cards, maxing out a credit card, getting another one, maxing that out, to where you're now seeing stories all over YouTube where people, both young and old, have tens of thousands, if not even hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. And the weight this holds is so heavy. With that now, though, probably even more acutely dangerous than that are these buy now, pay later programs. And this is not only affecting my generation, millennials, but especially the younger generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, that, kind of have a mentality of, I'll just worry about it later. And they're using these programs like Klarna and Afterpay to literally buy anything and everything they want, and they're just going to worry about it later. So, people are door dashing, literal meals and putting on, Afterpay, where they'll just break it up into, 4 small payments, and then they do that with something else, and then they do that with something else. And before they know it, how's it going? They have literally, thousands of dollars in debt, just racking up, stacking up. And this is an ultimate trap. This is a trap that's getting so many people into a very, very, very dangerous position. And it's keeping them bogged down. And this is something that, guys, I have a little bit of experience with this. Way back in the day, I got into some debt. Fortunately, it wasn't a crazy amount, but it was enough to kind of wake me up about how uncomfortable and kind of taxing that time is to be even in a little bit of debt. And fortunately, by the grace of God, I quickly got out of that. And I feel so much for these people that, unfortunately have gotten themselves into a really, really dangerous position. And so, we are called biblically to avoid this. We have Proverbs 22:7 that literally says, the borrower is the slave to the lender. And this is what it feels like when you're in debt, whether that's just credit card debt, heavy car loan, to where your monthly expenses are now increasing across the board. And now people are feeling it even more with stuff like inflation. And now when they have these debts on things that they wouldn't have really, really needed anyway, it makes the breathing room so much tighter. Then you add in credit card debt. Then you add in these Afterpay programs. This is where it can really quickly get people in a bind. And that's where this is ultimately a trap set up by the system to keep people really, really tied down, bogged down. And along that, with that, we're called in Romans, to owe no one nothing but to love them. And it makes it so much harder when you are, deeply in debt to have that level of room to really, really, love your neighbor as yourself and all of that. And, I believe that spiritually, this isn't only a thing that's, kind of something that, we're called to just through wisdom, like in Proverbs, not to be in debt. It's just a wise thing to do. But I do believe that there's actually a spiritual warfare element to this as well. Like I said, we could talk about who's created the system, who's actually designed the system, who owns the debt, the massive amounts of debt worldwide, and who has set up the system to be this way. We're not going to get into that in this video. But I do believe that this has also been designed this way to hurt people spiritually as well. And that's where we were called to live more simply than that. Not saying necessarily, you being successful financially or anything like that is inherently wrong. But, we've been warned against this. And, how we can fight back against this is first, we need to be grateful for what we have. We need to be grateful for who we are in Christ. And with that, we won't feel the need anyway to try to impress people, with stuff. These people don't, other people that you see on social media or who you could show off to, they don't really care anyway. We wouldn't, if we truly are walking with Christ, we're not going to have the need or the desire to be buying all these things and be ultra materialistic. With that, we can be grateful for simple things. We can be grateful for the simple life like this, walking out in nature, doing these prayer walks, spending time with family, spending time with loved ones, doing things that throughout all of human history, people have gained a lot of joy from. and where, how we were actually designed to be as humans, and not be so separated from other people. With that too, we're called to be grateful, and then we're called to be, thankful giver. We're called to, help other people in need. And how hard is it to really, really kind of stretch yourself that way and help other people, whether that's someone, in need, anything like that. If you are in debt, if you're in debt, you're really, really focused on yourself. It makes it harder and harder and harder to be selfless when you are so focused on you yourself, just trying to break out of that trap. Then on the other side, there's a very, very tangible spiritual debt that happens when you go into debt. And that's where, when you're trying to climb out of debt, there's so much mental energy that goes into that, mental stress. But then there's, also the time spent. You're trying to get out of that. This is all freedom you could have had to focus purely on God and your walk with Christ. And, this is where, when you see monastics or incredibly, incredibly holy people, very few times will you see that these people had, enormous amounts of things. They usually lived extremely, extremely simple. Almost, you'll see many times they'll live as pilgrims, just walking the earth, or they'll live in a, small hut. They'll live in a monastery. They don't have very many things to their name. But with this, their walk with Christ is so incredibly deep. That's where there is a beauty to living more of a simple life. So, I would encourage you to try to go deeper with God, to where you find more joy out of living a simple life. And that's kind of what you strive for anyway. It's not striving for more. You strive for, enjoying stuff like this. You enjoy helping people in need, stretching yourself that way, all of that. But at a bare minimum, I encourage y'all to be on guard for how the system is set up to keep you opposite for what we're called to as Christ followers, to where, we go into debt. It makes it so much more self-focused. It makes us much more desperate. It makes us feel very bogged down. There's almost that feeling of, heaviness on your chest, almost like you can't breathe, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And the whole mentality of impressing other people, buying things you don't need or want, I'll worry about it later. If you don't have the money for it now, definitely don't pay for it. Just be very cautious on all of this, because the system absolutely is set up to get you broke, keep you broke, make you more broke, and keep you trapped into this system. And it will negatively affect you spiritually, or at least make your spiritual walk a bit tougher, in my opinion. There's definitely a beauty to the simple life. So I hope this encouraged some of y'all out there. If you have already found that you're a bit in this trap, be encouraged. You can get out of this. It's going to be hard work, but you should strive to get out of it, because there's a freedom that comes from it, and then you can be more selfless. It's easier to be grateful, all of that. So you guys can do it. So I hope this encouraged some of y'all out there. If it did, please go ahead and smash that like button. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Leave any comments or questions down below. All glory to God. God bless you. Have a great rest of your day.